All right, welcome to class. It is our last week. I think this says week 10. I think that's a typo. I think it's been 9 weeks. Anyway, that was a typo on the slides, but welcome. This is our last week of class. We have today's class and then Thursday. So very exciting. You have made it to the end. So as always, we're going to use Replit today. And I did want to go ahead and talk about the last class for a bit. So we took a vote, and for the last class meeting, most people wanted to talk about how to debug your code. So I'm going to go over some tips and tricks for that on Thursday. Time permitting, we may do some other stuff, but I'll probably just be focusing on how to debug the code, your code. So that will be for the last class. For today, we're going to discuss the final project. I'm going to go over that with you. I have a link here I made a little slide deck for the final project just to break it up into pieces for you. If you would like to, it is completely optional. But I do recommend doing the project just so that you can put together all of the tools that you've learned throughout this summer. I like to have a project to wrap things up. So I think this is a great way to showcase all of your work that you've done this summer. So if you would like feedback on your project, like if you want, it's not really a grade, but I can give you feedback on it and say, where you could improve, or if you did perfect, then you can submit your Replit link to me via email or Discord. I'll talk about that a bit more in this slide deck here. Send that to me by August 15th. I want to give you plenty of time to work on it. And also next week I will be out of town. So I want to give you plenty of time to work on it and then send it to me. So please do that. And I will get back to every person that emails it to me or sends it to me on Discord. Please do use a Replit link or like a .py file, not an image, so that I can run your code itself. After we discuss the final project, we're going to go over libraries, which is our very last chapter that I have scheduled for us. And then we will spend the rest of time allowing people to ask questions and also work on the final project, time permitting. I'm assuming we'll have enough time. So let's go ahead and look at this final project. I have the slides. You can always find these slides in our shared drive, but I put it in the chat as well so that you all definitely have access to the final project. So just to go over it, as I said, it's optional but recommended. You can submit to me via email or Discord, submit a link or attach a PI file by August 15th, and I will get back to you with feedback. So an overview of this project, you're going to be creating a Python application that acts as a personal finance manager. The program is going to help users track their income, expenses, and provide basic financial summaries. So here is an example of what this might look like. So I made one, and this is what mine looks like. And this should be close to what yours looks like as well when you run it. So this is just in Replit when I run it from the console. I have finance tracking app. What would you like to do? 1, add an expense. 2, add an income. 3, view finance report. 4, view summary statistics. And Q, quit the application. So if I enter 1, it will ask me to enter, that's add an expense. It'll ask me enter the expense amount. So I entered $2.99, and then it runs that loop again to ask if I want to do anything else inside this application. I select 2 to add an income. The user entered 100, or me, I was the user in this case. And then I continued. So it kind of cuts off here, but I continue on the next page where you can see it. Basically, I just keep using this app, and this is kind of so you can have an idea of what your app will look like by the end of this. So you have this menu, which we have done before, and the user selecting an option and then performing different tasks based on that option. So one of the things I want you to be able to do is give a summary of, I call them summary statistics of the report. You're going to say the total expenses that they've had, the total income that they've had, and then that net balance. So total expenses, a summation of all the expenses that you enter. Total income, a summation of all the income this person has had. And then net balance is the total income minus total expenses, so that you can see the net balance in your little imaginary bank account. And then it quits when you press Q. So here, that is what the app will look like How your app will keep track of this is you're going to be creating a text file called financedata.txt. And then whenever the user selects to enter an expense, and then you ask how much, you put into the text file expense and then the amount that they put, income and the amount. So I'll explain all of the finer details of this, but this is what my app looks like. And we can go over this as many times as you want to until you understand. So we have an app, choose from a menu. You could do a bunch of things. You're gonna be able to choose those, enter expenses and income. It saves that to a file. And then this file actually is saved for the next time as well. So you're not going to delete it at the end. It's meant to be saving this data, forever in that file. And so we'll go over that a bit more. There's a couple components to this. Your program should have a simple text-based user interface that gives the user options to enter for adding income, adding an expense, viewing all of their transactions, and then viewing that finance summary that I showed you. So just that menu of those 4 options plus Q to quit. Remember, we have done this before with creating menus, so you can go back and look at previous slides for those examples. The second component of this is file handling. So your program will keep track of data in a text file called financedata.txt, which is going to have the following information: the transaction type, so either income, you gained money, or expense, you spent money. And then that transaction amount in dollars, with each line in the file representing one transaction. And then each piece of data is separated by a single space. So just as an example, you saw in my file earlier, but we have income, a space, and then the amount of that income. The next line is the next data point where we have expense, space, $2. So that is what your file should look like that you are constructing. You should also have functions in this project. You should have functions for opening the file, editing or adding to the file, reading data from that file, and then also functions to calculate, the total expense, the total income, and the net balance. And then finally, you want to wrap this all up in a nice main function that's going to display your user interface, call the other functions when necessary, and finally close your file at the very end of the program. I have an example layout that you can look at here. So here is an example of a layout that you could do if you're a bit confused on how you should arrange these functions. So I have a function for opening the file, and then I have some comments in here for what this function should be, a function for adding data to the file, a function for reading the file, reading the data from the file, a function for summary statistics to calculate these, and then I have my main function where I'm going to open the file. I'm going to display a user menu in some sort of way that allows it to keep going until the user enters quit, right? So some sort of loop. Check the user selection, and then depending on that selection, either edit data inside the file or print the data, and then finally close that file. Okay. So you can look at that example layout. I do have that available to you. And just as an overview of what should happen when you run this program. So first, at the start of the application, the program should create that financedata.txt or open the existing file. As a hint, well, I'll tell you this hint. Yes, so if financedata.txt exists, the program should append to the end of the file. So I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, you should open the file with A+. That will allow you to append and to the end of the file and also read previous data in the file. So A+. The program should offer a menu for the user to select from, just like I showed you. The program should perform the user selected task. You don't want it to just do nothing. And then the program should offer that menu in a loop until the user enters Q. If they enter something that's not one of your options or Q, you can say, please enter a correct input. Okay, so just to go ahead and show you, I have written my program. And if I run this, so I'm going to run it. So mine already, the interaction that I showed you before, created this expense and income, expense $299, income 100. I showed you this over here. You can see where I entered that. There it is. So I said 1 to add an expense, enter the expense amount $299. So here's an example of what that file looked like after I ran that program. And now if I run the program again, we don't want it to erase anything in the file. We want it to add new things to the file. So I just want to show you what it looks like when I run it. Okay, so it says, what would you like to do? I'm going to say add another income. So selection 2, enter the income amount. I'm going to say $30. All right, and now I want to view my finance report, and it shows that income of $30. And also, if you look over at this file, it adds it there. So if the file already exists, it shouldn't erase anything. It should just add to the end. Now I can select 4 to view summary statistics, and it has that updated calculation with total expenses $299, total income $130, and then net balance $127 and a penny. So just a basic overview. If I hit, hello or something, it says, please enter a valid option. I'm going to hit Q to quit. So there is my program. So I hope you enjoyed doing this. It was pretty fun for me to write up. I do have a couple hints here. So one hint is that if you don't want a hint, then you can block your ears. But we didn't talk about this, which is why I want to give you the hint, your read file function, I just went ahead and gave that to you. You do have to say fo.seek0. That places your cursor at the beginning of the file. We have to do this because when you open a file in append mode, it places the cursor at the end of the file, and then it won't read the beginning of the file. So if that didn't make sense to you, that's okay. Just put this line here, just copy this function here. So I gave that to you because I saw that was in there and I needed to make sure you knew what the seek function was. You can read more information about seek if you're interested. So if you want an extra challenge, because we do have some students who want to do extra, which I always love, you can build that same app as described, but also add a column in your finance data.txt that represents the date and time each transaction was added. This is going to use what we will learn today about libraries, but I've also linked the package that you'll need. So as an example, you have expense, the price, and then the date, and then the time. So that is something you can add if you want a little bonus. And finally, are you stuck? Did you get stuck? Try Google or ChatGPT. These are tools that professional programmers are using today. It is not cheating. It is very good for you to develop the skills on how to Google programming questions instead of just giving up or asking me. Try Googling it, try asking ChatGPT, try running through this code on your own, look at the error message that you're getting, Google it or just read through it. The error message usually has good information in it. I also have some other resources here. W3 Schools has great tutorials on Python. That's my #1 recommended resource. And then freecodecamp.org is a whole online course that you're able to take and watch videos if you prefer a video format. So, questions about the final project. If you have questions, put them in the chat or raise your hand. You'll have time to work on it today as well. And then it'll be due in 2 weeks. So I'm very excited. Sterling, do you have a question? Oh, go ahead, Sterling.
Yes. What is about?
Oh, yes. We're going to learn about libraries today.
Oh, well, libraries, that's good.
Not the physical kind of library, not the one with books in it, but Python libraries. Okay. All right, if you have questions about that final project, let me know. We'll also have time at the very end for you to ask questions and work on it. Okay, if there are no questions, we will go over the task from last week. This dealt with file handling. So I asked you to write a function that creates a file. It should take one argument, the file name. And then after creating that file, it should write 3 lines of text to the file. The content here doesn't matter. I just want you to write 3 lines of text to a file and then close that file and call that function that you just wrote in main. So let's go over how to do that. Let me get to Replit. Okay, creating a Python Replit. I'm going to call this create file. Okay, so we want to define a function. So go ahead and put in the chat, how am I going to define my function? What do I do? When I say you need to write a function, what do you type? Go ahead and put in the chat, what should I type out first to define my function? Getting a couple answers here. Awesome. Okay, thank you everyone. So yes, a lot of people are saying we need to define main. That is very correct. So we're going to define main, and then I'm going to go ahead and call main at the bottom here. But what we also want to do is define our other function, which we're going to do at the top of the file here. So I'm going to define, let's see, what should I call our function? Where is it? Creates a file. Okay, so I'm going to call it create file. So create underscore file, and then it should take as an argument the file name. So I put that in the parentheses there, colon, and now we're going to define, this is where we're going to, create the file. This main function is actually going to be where we call our function. Okay, so create the file. So I'm just going to say, yeah, so it should create the file and write 3 lines of text. So I'm going to use that method that I showed you before that automatically closes the file for us. So I'm going to say with open. Now we get to name it file name, and we just want to create a file. I'm going to use X because that allows us to create a file and write to it. So with open file name, permission is X or create as FO. Hopefully this is coming back to you from last week. And now we're just going to write some lines, and it doesn't matter what lines you want to write. So I'm just going to do fo.write hello \n to go to the next line. fo.write hello again \n to, it's like pressing enter to go to the next line, and then fo.write goodbye. Okay, so now I have my code to open the file with the file name that this person gave it. Write a couple lines, 3 lines to be exact, and then at the end of this, we don't have to close it because this with open as will close it when it's done. Okay, so we've got that. And do we need to return anything with this function? We do not. So you don't need a return statement. You can write return if you want, but that is not mandatory. So now inside of our main function, we are just going to call create file and then give it our file name. So if we want to be able to change that file name, we can say, I'm going to say my file equals hello.txt. And then I can call the create file function on the variable that I created here. So the reason I split it up instead of just putting hello.txt directly in here is just because it's a common practice for if you want to be able to easily change that variable, especially if you have other functions that use the same variable later on. Okay, so now if I run this, perfect. So we didn't ask it to print anything. That's totally fine. You can see over here, it did create a hello.txt and it put in our 3 lines of text for us. So perfect. Awesome, awesome. So please do let me know if there are any questions about how I did this. I hope file handling is making more sense to you now. You will need to do something like this for your final project. So you will have plenty of opportunity today to ask questions about that for your last week. All right, any questions? I'm gonna take a sip of my water. All right. Then we can go on to new stuff today. We're going to be talking about libraries. So we have been using Python, and Python knows several things. You know, we can do basic mathematical operations in Python. We can open files in Python. We can open text files in Python. But if I wanted to do something like open a CSV file, a comma separated value file, or an Excel file, I would actually need another another set of functions that's outside of the basic Python. And these are called libraries. You'll also hear them called packages. There is sometimes a debate on the difference between those two words that I don't care enough about to tell you or get into here. I will be calling them libraries for this class, and it's basically a library of code that someone else wrote that you can then add to your code and access their functions. If you are a gamer, you can think of this as a mod for a game. So you can play a game without any DLC or mods, just the basic game, or if you want some other cool functionality in your game, you can add a really cool mod. I personally like to play Civ 5 or Civ 6, and I think in Civ 6 there's a new mod that someone put out where you can allow your scouts to have scout cats instead of scout dogs, which I'm a big fan of, obviously. So anyway, these are ways to extend your program's functionality. You can think of them like mods for a game. If you're not a gamer, just think of it like being able to use code that someone else has wrote to make your life easier. You typically will download and install these on your computer using a program called pip or conda. And once they're installed, you can start using them in your own Python software. Some versions of Python already have very common libraries installed. So typically today, if you were to install Python onto your computer, it would already have pandas, I believe, NumPy, some very common libraries, datetime, time, OS, and we'll talk about what all of these random words I'm spitting out at you are. So some versions of Python will already have these libraries that you don't have to install. It's like someone else made these libraries and then Python, the official Python developers said, oh yeah, that's nice. We're just going to add that to the official version of Python. But as we are all using Replit, you can't exactly download new libraries to your Replit IDE. You kind of can, but Replit typically comes with all of these common libraries pre-installed when you use their Python template file. So you don't need to do any installation for this class, but you can, read up on installing libraries. If you go to the library's documentation, usually it's a website that says this is what our library does. It will tell you how to install it if you want to. So some common libraries: pandas for data science, for reading in CSV files, anything to do with data, matplotlib for making graphs, and NumPy for doing linear algebra and matrix operations. So those are some very common ones that you see a lot as a Python developer. To use a library, after you have installed it, you import it with the import keyword inside your Python file. So it goes at the very top of your code, and it says, import and then the name of the library. So there is a library called math. It allows you to do some extra math things like use pi and e and other variables like that, other special mathematical numbers like that. And you use this import keyword. So you say import math or import pandas. You can also give that library a shorter name with the as keyword. So math isn't very long to type out. It's not that much, but you could say import math as M. And then whenever you reference M, Python knows you're referencing the math library. Mostly what I see is import pandas as PD. That's a very common, that is the most common example I can think of when I see people do this. It's because they don't want to keep typing out pandas. So they tell it to abbreviate that. And then when you use the pandas library, you can use that abbreviated version. So what does this mean? What does it mean when you import a library? Why do you care? Well, after you import it, then you can use it. And what you're doing here is you're accessing a specific class or function from that library by adding a dot to the library name, followed by the name of the class you want. So I said that the math library includes a variable called pi that is actually just, you know, the number pi, like 3.1415, blah, blah, blah. So you can say import math, and then let's say you want to use pi, so you can say pi equals math.pi, and then if you print that, it actually will give you pi as a number. So what file am I even looking at? Okay, I'm going to get rid of this here. So let's look here. So if I say, if I don't have the import statement, and I tell Python to print pi, error. It says name pi is not defined. That's true. We don't have anything called pi in base Python. You can't access it. You could set it yourself, you know, if you want. But that's not super useful to us. So instead, we're going to use the math module or library. We're going to say import math. And then I can say pi, you can call it whatever you want. I'm going to say my variable or my pi variable equals math.pi. Now, if I print this variable that I've just created, it will be equal to pi. And there we go. So that's how you can do some things. I think they probably also have E. The math function also has square root included. So let's say my num equals 4. And then I'm going to say square equals my, it's math dot, I think it's square root. I think it's SQRT. Let's see. Yeah. So math function also has a square root function, and how you would know about this is you would already know about the math function. So if we just go here, Python math library, what you're going to do is I like to find the W3 Schools tutorial. This is the official Python documentation, which is good, but it is a bit dry. This actually has examples that you can use. So then you can go here and see what functions are included. Oh, math module. And then you can see what functions are included in this math module. What can you do with this? And so after you've imported, you can use all of these special functions that Python math module allows you to do. Okay. So another tip with using libraries, you can just, if you only want the number pi from math, you don't care about all of the other math functions that you can get, you can just use the from keyword and import one thing from a library. So the from keyword allows you to just get one specific class or function without accessing it with a dot. So instead of saying import pi or import math and then saying math.pi, you can say from math import pi, and then it knows that the only thing you want from this math module is the number pi, and then you can print that. So let me show you how we would do that. So instead of this, I say from math import pi, and now I can just print pi directly, but I can't access the other math functions that it comes with. Okie doke. I have too many tabs open today. So that is how you use libraries. You can also create your own custom libraries. I usually have a couple students ask me about this each year. All you do is that you write your own functions, save those to one .py file that's in the same directory as whatever file is going to be using that library, and then you can import it using the file name. So if I have a file named mymodule.py, in the same directory, I can create another Python file and then say import my module, and it'll import it just like it's a Python library itself. Creating your own package is a huge ordeal, especially if you've never done it before. So I don't imagine that a lot of you will be doing that, but I usually get questions on it. So I like to put that there. Yes, you can create your own if you would like to. And then finally, I wanted to leave you with some useful libraries. So there's OS, operating system, which allows you to execute terminal commands in Python. So if you remember, when we would type ls or make directory or change directory, you can do that inside Python by using this OS module. Pandas is a library for data science. Matplotlib is great for plotting data. NumPy, linear algebra and mathematics. sklearn if you want to get started with machine learning. And one that is useful if you want to do the bonus exercise for the final project is datetime, which allows you to parse and use dates. Okay, so just very quick, I just wanted to make sure that you knew about libraries and how to use them before we ended our course. But this is the very last chapter that I was going to teach you. So for the rest of our time, I'll answer questions. We can work on the final project. And then on Thursday, we'll go over debugging. So I'm going to check the chat real quick to see if there are any questions. Please do raise your hand if you have questions about what we learned today. I can also do more examples of libraries if you want me to. Oh, yeah, so this is a great question. Is it best practice to go to the top of your code and add each line to import a library so they're all grouped together? Or do you only import when you're going to use it? That's a great question. So best practice is to import all of your libraries up at the very top of your code, so that when someone reads your code, they can look at the very top of your file and know exactly what they need to install on their computer. So if I want to, install pandas as PD, there's a lot of import NumPy as NP, all kinds of stuff like this. And you put that all at the top, then you'll have your def main to define your main function. Don't forget to indent your code and then call main. So yeah, at the very top is where your libraries are going to go. Okay, other questions? Yes, if you need to submit the project after August 15th, that should be fine. I can't promise I'll get back, if someone sends it to me in October, I may not be able to get back to you. But sometime in August, if you're able to submit that final project, that is perfectly acceptable. The deadline is just so that you have 2 weeks to do it. Okay, well, I will have this final project sitting here so that you all can spend the rest of your time working on it or asking questions. Please do let me know if you have questions. Otherwise, if you don't want to do work on your project, then you're free to go. If you want to stay and work on your project, stay here, ask questions. That's the end of official class today. Yes, Felix.
Just so we're clear, the project should consist of everything you told us about today.
Yes, so the project is everything that's in this slide, these slides.
Okay. And we can click on the links to help.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to stop recording so that people can ask questions.